Those are your headlines. Time now for a look at today's business news. And we are joined by Cole Spangler, who has more for us.
That's right, Naomi. The company's new CEO, Boeing, we're talking about, finally taking the reins today. Now, his name is David Calhoun, a member of the board of directors since 2009, also a former managing director at private equity firm Blackstone. Not expected to have a very long grace period. It's because Boeing is now undergoing one of the most turbulent periods in the company's storied history, with its 737 MAX jets grounded worldwide following 2 fatal crashes. Kaimel Nedelek has more on David Calhoun and the challenges that lay ahead.
Boeing is betting on Chairman David Calhoun to get them out of its ongoing crisis. At 63, he's a veteran, having spent 10 years on the board of Boeing and over 20 years at American engineering conglomerate General Electric. He's viewed by many as a safe pair of hands. Announcing his appointment in December, Boeing said that a change in leadership was necessary to restore confidence in the company. Calhoun has got his work cut out for him. He'll have to get the beleaguered 737 MAX back in the air, foster better ties with regulators who've lost trust in the company, and detoxify the brand. After 2 air disasters left 346 people dead. Investigators in both crashes pointed the finger at Boeing's anti-stall mechanism, MCAS. The aviation giant had insisted pilots did not need expensive flight simulation training to use MCAS. It now says they do. Just last week, as part of a pledge to transparency, Boeing handed over hundreds of emails to the FAA, the US air regulator, including messages that cast an unflattering light on the company, with 2 Boeing employees saying 8 months before the first crash that they would not put their families on a 737 MAX plane. Boeing is the largest exporter in the US. It has a staggering 137,000 employees across all 50 states, and many more suppliers and airlines have close ties to the firm. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said on Sunday that the crisis could slow US growth in 2020 by as much as half a percentage point.
Next up, here in France, the government has unveiled a major concession in its plan to overhaul pensions. Over the weekend, Prime Minister Edouard Philippe announced he'd be scrapping a proposal to hike the earliest possible retirement age with full benefits from 62 to 64. That concession was designed to appease moderate unions with the hopes of bringing an end to a nearly 40-day-long strike.
Whether it's the trade unions, the employers' organizations, or the government, it took us time to move our positions and make them evolve, to take a step towards one another. And that's the logic of a compromise. It's not a step backwards. A compromise is a step forward. You need everybody to move, and it took a bit of time for everybody to do so.
Thanks.
Now, that compromise was due in large part to France's CFDT union. It's the country's largest and places a premium on dialogue with employers and the government. On the other hand, it's the more militant CGT union that's been largely leading the strikes. It still wants the whole reform package tossed out, and it's vowing to keep striking until that happens. Here's how one local CGT activist reacted to the concession.
This pivot age of 64 that they have presented is just a red herring that they are going to show to the world to hide what is behind it all.
Let's take a look now at the day's trading action. Major European indices are kicking off the week with some slight gains here. Shares on the CAC 40 up around 0.1%. There are also gains on the FTSE over in London and the DAX in Frankfurt. Similar gains there, up around 0.25%. It's all as investors look ahead to the signing of a so-called Phase 1 trade pact between the US and China. That's expected to take place on Wednesday. Now, markets in Japan were closed due to public holiday, but the major Asian indices also posted some modest gains. Shares on the Hang Seng in Hong Kong up around 1%. Shares on the Kospi in Seoul also with similar gains, and shares on the Shanghai Composite up around 0.75%. Now, next up, a report at the Financial Times. Citing several sources, the newspaper says senior executives at Nissan have ramped up secret contingency planning for a potential breakup with partner Renault. It involves gaming out a, quote, total divide in engineering and manufacturing, as well as changes to Nissan's board. It's the latest sign of unease at the Franco-Japanese Auto Alliance, with some at Nissan reportedly believing the partnership with Renault is a drag on the company. Tensions at the alliance have only grown, of course, since the arrest of former chairman Carlos Ghosn, who's since fled to Lebanon. And finally, an unusual proposal from a Japanese billionaire. 44-year-old Yasuko Maezawa says he's looking for a female life partner to accompany him on the first civilian trip around the moon. That flight's overseen by the firm SpaceX. Maizawa has put up a website where people can apply for the spot. Requirements include being a single woman over 20, interest in space, and wishing for world peace, with the final decision to be announced in March. Though it should be said, Naomi, that does leave quite a time before the actual flight. That's not supposed to take place until 2023. So.
Cool, that's quite a proposition. Do we know if he's had any responses yet?
Not yet, as far as we can tell.
Okay, keep us posted. Cool, thanks very much.